Ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries, and those of you who choose other on important governmental forms, this is Nick, formerly known as Nico, from the Survive the Dead server on SCUM, and this is the long-awaited video follow-up for my previous video that covered G-Portal server settings. You can see now that we are actually in Ping Perfect. We have changed server hosts a little while ago, because at the time, G-Portal did not have some of the functionality we wanted, such as FTP access. They have since added it. They're doing a very good job. Ping Perfect and G-Portal are both excellent server hosts. There are a number of other server hosts out there that you might like. I suggest doing a quick Google search and especially reading user reviews if you're considering a server host for SCUM. We'll just roll through this really quick. You can see here that I am in our client area on Ping Perfect, which gives me some basic information about our server. Over on the left-hand side here, I can change our server password. Yes, our server is password protected, and I'll get to that in a moment. I can stop, start, and restart our server. I can upgrade and downgrade, and I can cancel. Over here gives me my info about when I need to pay them in order to keep my server. Here, you have something listed as domain. This is really nifty because with Ping Perfect, if you own a domain name that you would like to use for your server, such as ours, which is survivethedead.com, currently under construction, so don't try to go there just yet, you'll find nothing. You can actually host that website for free with Ping Perfect. It's pretty nifty. What we want to do right now is actually log into our control panel and deal with Google, who for some reason still wants to put in the wrong password for me. It'll take us to our server game services. And you can see here again, basic information. It shows you your server name, your IP address, its status. You can start and restart it here. You have configuration files, which is where we'll be going in a moment. You have your log viewer, which will show you things like your kill logs, your mine logs, your log in and log out logs, all sorts of logs. Current activity and stats, which will give you usage information on your server. You can make backups, do wipes, restore backups, ban IP or unban IP addresses, and perform Steam updates, all from this nifty little console. What we want is our configuration files. Now you'll see here you have a list: server settings, admin users, exclusive users, banned users, muted users, whitelisted users, and game.ini files. On the right hand side you have some options. You have text editors, which will give you access to the actual text lines of the server settings and other setting ini files. And you have configuration editor, which is just a nicer UI interface. One thing to be cognizant of is when there's a patch, typically large patches like 0.5, 0.6, and soon, hopefully, 0.7, you'll want to use configuration editor rather than text editor because it takes a little bit for the text editor stuff to stick. So if you use that instead of configuration editor, your changes might not hang in there. We're going to go into configuration editor for our server settings. Much of this has not changed since my last video. That obviously looks a little bit different from G-Portal, but the settings themselves are the same. You have your server name, which is whatever your server is called. Ours is Survive the Dead PvPVE, discord.gg/survivethedead for access. Yes, we have a vanity Discord URL because we are just vain like that. Your admin password is pretty much useless. All of the people that access your server console you invite via email. They have their own login, username, and password. So I have yet to use that admin password. Server password, you will see that our server is password protected, as I previously stated. The reason it is password protected is because we wanted to eliminate griefers from our server, and I can say that it has absolutely worked. Now I know what everyone's question about that will be. Did password protecting your server slow your server growth? Yes, it did. Not to an extensive degree, but it did. Because in order to join our server, you have to go to discord.gg/survivethedead, or in your Discord app, click Add Server, Survive the Dead, and then you have to agree to our server rules before you get Dino, which is a wonderful server bot for Discord, by the way, to send you a DM with our server password. It is multiple steps in order to join our server, which is why it turns off the griefers. Nobody wants to go to that kind of trouble just to go in and wreck stuff. There's easier fish to fry. I do strongly recommend password protecting your server if you have problems with a lot of griefing. If anyone's unfamiliar with the term of griefer, these are people that hop into random servers to either use cheats to cause problems or just generally create mayhem and kind of ruin everything for everybody. If I had the option to do again, knowing that it would slow down our server growth, knowing everything that's happened over the last number of months since we password protected our server, I would 100% do it again. Because I can now actually play on my server rather than spending my days dealing with griefer problems and fixing things. It does slow your growth, it's not that bad. We still get new players every week. Most of this stuff we've already gone over, so I won't roll through it again because I don't want to bore the heck out of you. I will point out a couple of things that I had some bad information on, and a couple of changes I've made that have actually improved our server experience. So you'll see first off, max allowed zombies in the world I have actually set to a pretty low number, 99. I did that as an experiment the other day. And the reason I did that is because a few days prior, I changed max allowed animals in the world to 99 after talking to a moderator on the SCUM official Discord. They suggested, since the maximum allowable number of animals in the world is 100, and we were having a lot of issues, like many other servers, with what seemed like animal scarcity after 0.5 and the map expansion, they suggested dropping it to 99 and seeing what happened. Well, I figured it wouldn't hurt anything, so I tried it. And by golly, it works. We have a lot more animals now, at least it seems so. The animal spawns seem to be more prolific, and hunting has gotten a lot better. So I decided to try the same thing with the zombies, because, as you can see, there's this nice bold warning, largely increasing any of the max values may cause your server to lag. Now, we don't experience a lot of lag on our server. We don't really have a lot of problems in general, but every little bit counts, and if I can provide an even better experience to the players on my server, I'm more than happy to try. So, our zombies were set at 300. I decided yesterday to drop them to 99 to see what would happen. The players have reported that there seems to be no change in zombie spawns, so we still have as many as we had before around the players, and I've yet to figure out if it did any improvements on server performance, but the improvements might be so small that I just didn't notice. However, at the very least, it's taken some strain off of our server, and it might work out better for us in the end. But I would definitely suggest if you have your animals set to 100, drop it to 99, and I bet you'll see it change. More animals will be available. One of the other things I changed is this max allowed drones in world. These are the little silver Tech 1 balls that like to follow us around and record our lives for the enjoyment of others. While they're kind of an integral part to the game, they give you that immersion factor that you are on a TV show. I have had several players complain that when those drones appear in their vicinity, they can cause frame drop. None of us were interested enough in keeping those drones to allow that frame drop to continue for some people, so I went ahead and disabled them yesterday. Haven't really noticed them being gone, so I guess it wasn't that big of a deal. All of this, anytime you see pawns are puppets. These are just the settings for how many can spawn where. Wild is in the woods and stuff. Exterior is in POIs but outside of buildings. Interior is in buildings and in bunkers. This is really what I want to go over because on my first video, I gave you absolute garbage information about sentries because there was no information available about them. However, in discussing things with devs and mods on the official SCUM Discord, I was informed that my setting of 1 for the sentries, the mechs, I wanted to have 1 mech on the server that would travel from place to place based on player proximity. I wanted to have mechs, but I didn't want them to be crazy. I was informed that I was actually creating a bug on our server by setting this to a particular number. The game is programmed to accept 2 settings. 0, which is off, no mechs, or -1, which is on, all mechs. While you can set a different number there, it can actually cause problems on your server. Things like lag and rubber banding, even rendering issues. I changed this to -1 and it has been quite an experience. I did not want to turn the mechs off. I like them. I like the challenge they present. And in most places it's absolutely fine. The bunkers, for instance, typically have 1 to 2 mechs depending on the bunker size. The B2 airfield, however, has been a little bit of a different animal. There are 10 mechs at the B2 airfield. That's right. 10 mech spawns at the B2 airfield. They are everywhere. So we decided to test that out. We took a group of 6 people to the B2 airfield, and over the course of 3 hours, we had 13 deaths, a massive loss of gear, and managed to loot about 20% of the airfield. Our whole goal was to just loot the whole airfield, and we did not achieve our goal. Because the mechs are ridiculous. Here's the really fun part. I have our sentry damage set to 10%. I can't go any lower without turning off their damage. They are as low as they will go. Previously, before the metabolism and medical update, that wasn't a problem. At 10% damage, you could take a good number of hits and pretty much walk it off. With the new medical system, however, that introduced the new injury levels, C1 through C4, mechs now deal C4 injuries across the board. Mechs deal fatal injuries. You will bleed out unless you have enough rags, bandages, or other such implements on hand immediately to manage yourself up. There were a couple of instances where 2 of us got trapped in a couple of tiny little areas in the hangars by multiple mechs. They shoot through the walls. I ended up with about a dozen C4 injuries and bled out in about 30 seconds. So this prompted me to use the new admin safe zone tool that is implemented into the game. Great job, by the way, devs, and I'll show that to you guys in a minute. I actually turned the B2 airfield hangars into safe zones from mech damage. I did this so that players can kind of hop across and maybe get out alive. It's still very challenging, but it gives you a fighting chance, and I would suggest that if you're gonna have all of the sentries turned on, that you use something similar to try to help the players out a little bit so they can make it through the airfield. The rest of this stuff's pretty self-explanatory. You've got your spawn check-in times for your puppets. I have mine set to 3 seconds. This is going to wait until a player is in proximity of a spawn point for puppets, and then 3 seconds later it'll spawn a puppet. It makes it a little more realistic. It kind of feels like the puppet was already there. The damage multipliers, these are human damages here. You have human to human, which is projectile. Armed melee, which is baseball bats and swords. Unarmed melee, which is your boxing and brawling. I have that set to 2 because I noticed in the MMA cage deathmatch fights, it was taking forever to kill your opponent. I doubled it to 2 so that the damage was higher, and now it feels more like a balanced fight. If you like doing the MMA death matches, or your players do, I would suggest upping that to 2. Human to human throwing damage multiplier, I have it 0 because sometimes we get a little rowdy. We have a cantina on our server, which is basically just a base that I built that's a community gathering place, and we hang out there a few times a week, and we can get a little nuts. One of our favorite things is throwing giant tree logs at other people's heads, watching them fly back 10 feet, and then laying on the ground unconscious in odd positions for a number of seconds. It's tons of fun and hilarious, but if you have throwing damage turned on, it really hurts. So I turn that off so we can be wild and crazy without anybody getting owies. Zombie damage multiplier. In my opinion, zombie damage being at 1 is too low. It's too easy, unless you have literal hordes of zombies on your server. Zombie damage at 2 was a little bit too hard hitting. If you got a couple of them on you, all it would take was a couple decent whacks and you'd be so injured that you were likely to die. We set it at 1.5 because it's a little bit challenging, but it's also not so challenging that it's frustrating. In my opinion, 1.5 for a moderately zombie populated server is a good number for their damage. Your gold lock zappers, These are going to cover the gold locks and the kill boxes. Basically what that's going to do is when you get past that first electronic door, if you're unfamiliar with the kill boxes, when you get inside, you have a number of little rooms that come off of the main room of the kill box. Those go to little loot areas. They are blocked by electronic doors. You have to complete a defusal minigame in order to get through those doors. It's exactly the same as defusing a bomb, it's just a wire cutter game. Once you get past those, you get to a caged off area where the good loot is stored. They have gold locks and zappers. This is going to apply to those zappers. I left it at the vanilla 1, so it's going to hurt. You're going to get zapped and you might be able to fail a number of times before you die. Unless you're wearing rubber gloves. Rubber gloves will protect you until they deteriorate. Beneath that setting, you see electrical door unlock failure assistance bonus. What this is, I have it set to 5. Every time you fail to unlock those electric doors in the kill boxes, you're going to get an additional 5 seconds on your next attempt. I did this to balance out the fact that when you fail, you get zombies dropped on your head. This will help you maybe get through that door without being murdered by the zombies falling from the ceiling first. The lock protection damage multiplier here, this is for player-made lock protection, the stuff that you would put on, say, your own base building doors. I have that set to half because we have a couple of admin-built loot bases on our server, and I didn't want people to just continuously die while trying to lockpick them. It's already hard enough to get through a gold lock in most instances, and behind the door is mines and such, so the loot bases are already difficult enough without being fried to death by some lock protection. Above that, you see Enable Locked Loot Containers. If you uncheck that, the loot containers that are locked in places such as police stations and bunkers will become unlocked. The only thing that will not are the cargo drops. Cargo drops will be locked regardless of what you do. If you don't want police stations and armories and bunkers and such to have locked chests in them, you can uncheck that and those will be unlocked. Squad member counts at intelligence levels. I have these all set to 12. This coincides with the limit squad members down here, which is 12. Our max squad size is 12. I don't particularly care what the squad leader's intelligence level is, so I just set them all to 12. But if you wanted to base how many people they can have in their squad on their intelligence attribute, this is where you would change that. So level 1, which would be 1.0 in intelligence, 1.0 to 1.9, 2, which is 2.0 to 2.9, 3, 3.0 to 3.9. You can change these to different numbers. So once we get the ability to increase our intelligence levels in this game again, squad leaders could continue to increase their intelligence level and then add more people to their squad if they wanted to. Sector and shelter respawns. Tick or untick those if you want to allow them. Squad mate respawn I have not seen available for a very long time in this game. I leave it checked just because, but it doesn't seem to do anything anymore. Gasoline settings really haven't changed. Water settings are new. These bottom 3 that say proximity, these have to do with players being in the area around a well or a water source and how that's going to impact that well filling. So you have replenish chance, which is how likely that well is to fill. Replenish amount, which is how much and how quickly that well is going to fill. And replenish timeout, which is how long it takes for the well to essentially roll again to see if it's going to fill or not fill, how much it's going to fill based on player proximity. So if player 1 comes into an area and checks a well and the well says this is 0% full, that action is going to make that well roll the dice and say, am I going to fill? And it's going to use random number generators and determine whether or not it's going to fill, how much, how long. Say player B comes in and checks the well again. That's going to reset that timeout. So that well might have decided that it's going to fill to 100% in the next 8 minutes, but player B ruined it by checking the well again. That's why it's best to check a well, wait a little while, come back and check and see if it's filled. If not, keep trying until it starts filling. I left these at vanilla because I like a little bit of a challenge when it comes to finding resources. The higher the number you put there, the more water you're going to have available, basically. Your messages, pretty self-explanatory. Welcome message plays when a player joins the server. Message of the day plays at a predetermined amount of minutes, which you can set here. Spawner settings, once again, spawner and examine spawner. Spawner is stuff that spawns in the open, like a pair of boots sitting on a chest or a shirt sitting on a couch. Examine spawner is where you have to search something to see the items inside, so a fridge or a cabinet. We have ours set to 2.5. I actually lowered it. We were at 3.5. We initially started our server at 10, which is technically max loot. You can go higher than 10, but it doesn't seem to change anything. The reason I lowered it is when you have too much loot in the game, it really detracts from the experience. If you can find everything, everywhere, all the time, what do you really have to look for? At 2.5, loot is sparse. Vanilla setting is 1, so if you compare it to an official server, we have 2.5 times the loot. It's still a little sparse, but you can find a lot of things. However, if you want something in particular, it's going to take you a little bit to find. Kind of found a good balance there at 2.5. The higher the number you put here, the more loot you're going to have around the map. Do remember that more loot, especially spawner loot as opposed to examine loot, is going to cause a little more lag. Vehicle settings really haven't changed. We still don't have a dynamo, which is a battery charger and possibly a jump starter. The only thing they really added since my last video is dirt bikes, which is pretty nifty. I actually quite like them. And if anyone's curious, and you don't know, this SUP, where it says Vehicle Spawn Group SUP, it stands for Stand Up Paddleboard. Those are the actual vehicle paddleboards, not the crafted paddleboards. Base building settings. Disable base building will prevent base building anywhere on your map. Map-based building restrictions, if you enable this, it will prevent players from building certain areas like in POIs. I have both of them unchecked because I want people to be able to build wherever they want. Voting, unfortunately, only admins can still initiate votes in the game, which I think is kind of crappy. Players should be able to vote if they want to stop the rain because someone's getting a migraine from sheet lightning. We have a few people on our server that have the sort of issue where when it storms, they have to get off the game because the lightning can kick off migraines. So hopefully one day they will give players the ability to vote for the weather and vote for the time of day. This is self-explanatory. Check these things if you want them. First person, third person, crosshair, different types of chat. You can actually turn off your map on your server if you don't want players to have a map. I don't know why you would do that unless you're a cruel jerk, but for survival-based servers that are hardcore, this is definitely a thing for you. There's the limit squad members again. We already went there. Allow coma. If you uncheck this, comatose state will not be available. Your players will just die rather than going comatose. This is your cargo drops. These first 2 are in minutes. These bottom 3 are in seconds. So time between events 3 to 5. Cargo drops can only appear at a minimum of 3 minutes and maximum of 5 minutes after the last one that appeared. Fall delay. This is the time in seconds between when it's announced and when it actually appears in the world. Fall duration is how fast it falls to the earth. I would not recommend putting that below 15 because if you do, it looks like a meteor and it's kind of ridiculous. Self-destruct, I have it at 1200 seconds, which is 20 minutes. That's how long the timer runs in the cargo drop before it explodes. All your respawn settings. Pretty self-explanatory. The multipliers for cooldowns is just how long between deaths do you have to wait for a particular option to be available again, like shelter respawn, for example. And then prices of fame points, how much it costs to do different types of spawns. Weather settings isn't new, but it is different. So you have start time of day, which really only applies after a wipe on your server. The first time your server comes on, your day will start at whatever time you set there. And this is in-game time, so that would be 6 a.m. in-game time. Time of day speed is how fast time goes compared to a real day. I have mine set to 2, which means our server days are 12 hours. so it's twice as fast as a normal day. Nighttime darkness, you have 3 settings: -1, which is actually pretty bright, 0, which is default and seems pretty good, and 1, which is pitch black. If you like pitch black nights, 1 is the number for you. Sunrise and sunset times, we have 1 a.m. and 2300, which is 11 p.m. That means in the game, our nighttime is 2 hours, but because we're double the speed of real life, in real life, our nighttime is 1 hour. So my players only have to deal with 1 hour of night. It gives an opportunity to experience night, but it doesn't get to the point where it's obnoxious. Body simulation speed is really neat. It's a newer setting. It came about after the new metabolism because so many people were having problems with needing to eat, drink, and urinate all the time that for a while this was being called a quote-unquote pee simulator. You can change this to speed up or slow down how often you need to eat, drink, urinate, defecate, all of that. Higher numbers is faster, lower numbers is slower. 2 seems to be pretty good. Like, my character has to go to the bathroom sometimes, she needs to eat a couple of times during a play session, but it's not overbearing. Item decay and food item decay multipliers, these are pretty new too. These came about with some of the stuff that came after 0.6. Item decay is going to be for items that aren't food. So, you know, guns, clothing, supplies. Food decay is obviously for food. The higher the number, the faster they decay. Custom map size, you can still make a custom map size if you want to. And if you'll notice, under Safe Zone Creator, there's no more settings. Why could that be? I will show you. Gosh, that's pretty. The devs did an incredible job with this new admin tool on making safe zones. First of all, previously you could only make 10 safe zones, and you could only make them in a circle. It was kind of annoying, because some of the stuff you want to cover is not circular. So if you check it out, you hit escape, you have this nifty new little option, admin settings. You click it, and look at that. What's really neat about this is not only can you make 25 zones, you can make 25 types of zones. You can add circles or rectangles. And when you add one, you can either input your X and Y coordinates and your radius, or you can just click add a region and then click and drag wherever you want it on the map. For example, in Z0 down here, I hit add rectangle, started in this corner, drug it down. Started here, drug it down, made 2 zones. What's really neat, if you look at the middle, they combine when they overlap. Another really cool feature about this is that the zones are enabled based on their position in the list. So for example, Cantina is higher than the PvP zones. So Cantina's settings would override the PvP zone settings if they were on top of each other in the game. If I were to put a giant green circle in the middle of this PvP zone and give it the safe zone, the Cantina safe zone label, its safeties would override anything I had set within that circle in the PvP area. It's really super cool how they override each other. So if I wanted to add, you know, another layer on top of this little town here in Z0 and make this town a safe zone, all I would have to do is put a circle on top of that, or a square, whatever I wanted to do. Give it, you know, a safe zone like the Cantina one, which disallows everything except world locks and building bases, and put it above these 2 PvP zones in this list. And PvP would be turned off there even though it's inside of a PvP area. The devs did an absolutely incredible job with that. The only complaint I have is that map is not zoomable. It was very difficult to get itty bitty little circles on those hangars at the B2 airfield without zooming that map, but I made it work. If they add that functionality though, it'll be a perfect spot on tool. Look at this place. Isn't this place gorgeous? One more thing they did, which, I mean, not that recently, but it's super cool. You can now loop dances. Look at it go. The Jagger is my favorite. Anywho, that's about it. Don't really have anything else to impart upon you. So y'all stay frosty, stay safe out there, and if you would like to check out our server, it is Survive the Dead PvPvE, discord.gg/survivethedead for access. You can join our Discord at Survive the Dead. And if you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I do read all of the comments, and I do my best to respond in a timely fashion. Have fun, and I'll see you next time.